All right, welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in, because today we're unpacking one of the most incredible and, honestly, polarizing stories in modern business history. We are looking at the life, the empire, and the enduring influence of John D. Rockefeller and his family. This is a story of ambition, of controversy, of groundbreaking innovation, and, the single greatest fortune ever created. So whether you consider him a visionary entrepreneur or something else entirely, the lessons we can extract from his life are absolutely fascinating.
I want to hook you right away with this single staggering number, 90%. Just imagine building a business so unbelievably powerful that it commands nearly 90% of an entire nationwide industry. It's a level of dominance that's almost impossible to even comprehend today. But that is exactly what Rockefeller achieved. And because he achieved this, his family is still considered one of the wealthiest and most influential in history, literally more than a century later. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The rise of Rockefeller. 2. Building the oil monopoly. 3. Genius or monopolist. And 4. The biggest breakup ever. And finally, 5. Legacy and business lessons.
Okay, Section 1. The rise of Rockefeller. Humble beginnings.
Rockefeller's rags-to-riches trajectory is pretty incredible. He was born in 1839 in New York to a family that was absolutely not wealthy. By age 16, he gets his first job as an assistant bookkeeper, which, sure, sounds boring, but this is exactly where he developed this relentless discipline for tracking every single penny. He carefully recorded every single dollar, every expense, and every profit. And that habit of meticulous tracking, it stayed with him his entire life. Meanwhile, in 1859, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, which basically set the stage for what would become his crowning achievement, the founding of Standard Oil in 1870.
Moving right along to Section 2. Building the oil monopoly. Capitalizing on chaos.
So when oil was struck in Pennsylvania, the masses rushed in a total frenzy to drill for it. It was chaotic, risky, and highly speculative. But Rockefeller, he thought differently. Instead of drilling, he focused purely on refining the oil. He realized that the real, stable money wasn't in gambling on finding oil in the ground. It was like owning the casino. Refining was the predictable, profitable bottleneck to control. And it turned out to be one of the smartest business decisions in human history.
He executed this strategy in 4 really aggressive steps. Step 1. He heavily invested in better, more efficient equipment. Step 2. He obsessively reduced waste in the refining process. Step 3. Because of his massive growing volume, he ruthlessly negotiated lower transportation costs with the railroads. And Step 4. He took all those optimized profits and just reinvested them, steadily buying out his competitors and expanding nationwide.
By relentlessly following those 4 steps, Standard Oil didn't just grow. It devoured the market. They ultimately controlled a staggering 90% of U.S. oil refining. Only 10% was left for everyone else combined. No company had ever achieved this kind of scale and control in American history. It's wild.
All right, Section 3. Genius or a monopolist? The great debate.
Historians remain deeply divided on his legacy. Supporters are quick to point out that he actually reduced oil prices for everyday consumers, drastically improved industrial efficiency, standardized the quality of oil so it was safer to use, and essentially built the whole framework for modern corporate management. But on the flip side, critics fiercely argue that Standard Oil relied on highly aggressive, sometimes even predatory tactics to crush smaller competitors, accumulating a dangerous amount of market power. Now, we aren't here to take a side, but rather to explain that it was exactly this intense tension between his phenomenal business success and the stifling of market competition that caught the attention of the United States government.
Which brings us to Section 4, the biggest breakup ever. The government steps in.
The mounting debates over Standard Oil's excessive power finally boiled over into a landmark legal battle. In 1911, the United States Supreme Court handed down a massive ruling. Standard Oil was found to be in violation of federal antitrust laws. The court decided that the monopoly was simply too powerful, too dominant, and restricted fair trade. And because of this ruling, they ordered the immediate dissolution of his massive, carefully constructed monopoly.
The sheer scale of this fragmentation was wild. The Supreme Court forced Standard Oil to be broken up into 34 independent companies. Imagine taking that 90% market share and shattering it into 34 distinct, competing entities practically overnight. At the time, a lot of people across the country believed this was the end of Rockefeller. They thought the breakup was going to cause him to lose his fortune and all his influence.
But to understand what happened next, you really have to remember his lifelong mindset. Rockefeller once famously said, Do you know the only thing that gives me pleasure? It's to see my dividends coming in. He was totally obsessed with equity. And here is the great ironic twist in all of this. He retained massive amounts of shares in those 34 newly formed independent companies. Once they were freed from the sluggishness of being a single massive monopoly, the value of those individual companies on the stock market began to absolutely skyrocket. Which leads us to this incredible historical fact. By 1916, just 5 years after the government tried to tear down his empire, the exploding share prices of those 34 splintered companies multiplied his wealth exponentially. Breaking up the monopoly actually made him richer. So rich, in fact, that he became widely recognized as the world's first billionaire in US dollars. It is a stunning paradox that the antitrust legislation designed to curb his power is exactly the thing that catapulted him to a level of wealth the world had literally never seen.
Finally, Section 5, Legacy and Business Lessons, Wealth and Responsibility. Rockefeller firmly believed that his massive wealth carried an equally massive responsibility. He spent the latter part of his life giving away hundreds of millions of dollars. His philanthropic giveback completely reshaped American society. He heavily funded the University of Chicago and founded Rockefeller University. The Rockefeller Foundation poured resources into medical research, vast public health initiatives, and global education. His charitable work became one of the largest philanthropic efforts in human history, fundamentally contributing to scientific and health advancements that we still benefit from decades later.
So, what should you take away from all of this? Let's cleanly synthesize 5 actionable business lessons derived directly from his life of ambition and strategy. Number 1. Master one industry before expanding. He didn't do everything. He just did oil refining better than anyone else. Number 2. Reinvest profits instead of spending them. Remember that bookkeeper mentality? Every single dollar had a job. Number 3. Efficiency is a competitive advantage. Reducing waste isn't just about saving money, it's a weapon to outlast your rivals. Number 4. Long-term thinking often outperforms short-term gains. He built infrastructure while others merely chased quick oil strikes. And number 5. True legacy isn't measured only by wealth, but by the institutions and the impact you leave behind.
Which brings us to our final thought today. I want to leave you with this provocative question to ponder. Is true legacy measured by wealth or the positive impact left behind? John D. Rockefeller's life remains one of the most extraordinary stories ever told. From a humble assistant bookkeeper to the architect of a sprawling monopoly, to a philanthropist who reshaped global health. His impact on modern business is just undeniable. So, does his ultimate legacy lie in his ruthless corporate dominance or in his enduring contributions to society? It's a fascinating question that reminds us that building real value requires strategy, patience, discipline, and the courage to think differently. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.